This video demonstrates how to knit a sock on the Lamb LT150 with the cuff down. This demonstration is done on a 66 needle cylinder and a 33 needle ribber. This video was taken during normal work hours of our factory. We had to delete a lot of the audio because there were multiple NC machines, an air compressor, and a radio running in the background. Before starting your sock, be sure that you have a good contrasting waste yarn already knit into the machine. Here we are introducing the project yarn at the start needle. The start needle is identified by the slot marked in green. Notice that the machine is operating with the cylinder in rotation, and the cylinder is rotating counterclockwise. This is because I'm planning on doing a ribbed cuff. Here I'm removing the waste yarn from the start needle and adding the project yarn, but I'm also sharing the project yarn to the needle adjacent or in front of the start needle. I feel this locks the yarn in place better. The start of this cuff is going to be done with a salvage, and the way to do that is to knit one row of stitches with the cylinder needles, and the very next row, the second row of stitches, will be knit with the ribber. The ribber cone must be a 1-to-1 combination with the cylinder for the salvage to work. Watch for the start needle for the second row of stitches. Line up the green slot of the start needle with the green dot on the ribber cone. Position the ribber cone to be sure that the ribber cone tangs are mating with the cylinder tangs on the inside diameter. Hook the cylinder spring onto the green nylon cylinder spring holder. Starting with the needle left of the start needle, remove this needle from the cylinder and insert it directly into the ribber cone, holding the stitch on the needle. Continue in this manner all the way around the cylinder. Here's a better view from the top of the machine where you can clearly see the window in which you can insert the needles into the ribber cone. Once you're done and you've inserted the very last needle into the ribber cone, unhook the cylinder spring from the green nylon cylinder spring holder. From this view, you can see how to check that the ribber latch guard wire is set properly. With your red pick tool, go around and make sure that the latches are not allowed to pop shut. Reset your counter to 0 and begin knitting your cuff. I should point out that right now I'm knitting with Kajejo Jaeger spun sock yarn. The tension setting on the yarn is set at 2 as shown here. The stitch value or stitch length is set to 5. As you continue cranking, keep an eye on the knitting and be sure it's not rising too high with the needles. As you can see here, the knitting is rising a bit too high, which indicates we need to add more takedown weight. When rib knitting, I typically use 3 weights. So I use the hook weight and 2 pucks added on top. My 10th row of knitting 1-to-1 ribbing, I stop knitting at the start needle and readjust the position of the needles. To the left of the start needle, I'll remove 2 ribber needles. This will give me a 5 knit, 1 purl knitting pattern. When moving needles to or from the ribber, always make sure that the latches are open. The latch guards are designed to keep the latches from popping shut, but they will not open a closed latch. Continue in this manner, removing 2 rib needles and keeping 1 in to have a 5 knit, 1 purl pattern all the way around the cylinder. Once the pattern is complete and you've gone all the way around and you're back to the start needle, remove the cylinder retainer spring from the green nylon cylinder spring retainer holder and make sure all the latches are open. Reset your counter and start this pattern. Here is a view of rib knitting from the side of the machine. Notice the direction of cranking is in the comfortable direction and the cylinder is rotating counterclockwise. Notice the location of the latch guard wires, and we're using the tall yarn guide when rib knitting. Once I have knit 45 rows of this 5 knit 1 purl pattern, at the start needle, I'm going to go back to plain cylinder knitting. Remove all needles from the ribbing cone and transfer them back to the cylinder. Once you've gone all the way around and you're back at the start needle and all needles have been removed from the ribbing cone, return the cylinder spring to the cylinder and make sure that all latches are open. Remove the ribbing cone by lifting and swiveling out of operation. Now that we're going to go back to just cylinder knitting, we can remove that third takedown weight and set it aside. Also, it may be necessary to roll up some sock material. As I'm done rib knitting for the remainder of the sock and I'm preparing to make the heel, I'm going to switch to camshell rotation. Reset the counter to 0 and crank in the comfortable direction as you were when rib knitting, and while you push up on the cylinder stop pins. There are 2 at 180 degrees from one another. Once both are engaged, the hand crank will be free to rotate and neither the cylinder nor the camshell will rotate with it. Now while cranking in the reverse direction, push down on the camshell plungers. There are 2 at 180 degrees. Remove the yarn from the tall yarn guide and swivel this yarn guide out of work. Now place or feed the yarn into the winged yarn guide and through the hook and take up the slack on the yarn. As when forming a heel, raise half the needles. Be sure to leave the start needle marked in green down, and also leave the needle marked in blue down as well. The needles behind the green and the blue needles are the needles that we're raising. The needles in front of the blue and the green needles are the needles that we'll be knitting with. Raise the tension to about 2 or 3 and insert the yarn through the heel spring. Be sure to add the second latch guard wire to the camshell. From here on, I'm going to continue with the normal routine of raising a needle on the end prior to shifting direction. For this sock, I'm going to introduce a new color for the heel. I have found that I can knit 4 rows of stitches on a heel before adding the heel weights. At this point, I'm going to add my heel forks, one on either side of the heel. Once I've reduced the heel to 12 needles, that's when I begin the 1 up, 2 down method. There are many techniques in making a heel, and please use the one that you're most comfortable with. As I'm still kind of a new sock knitter, I'm always a little confused how to end my heel. Here I think I did okay. Once you're done with your last row, lower all the needles back into work. While you're lowering, make sure that the latches remain open. Now that I'm done with the heel, I'm going to switch back to the gold colored yarn. Reset the counter, and I'm going to knit 50 rows of stitches for the foot of the sock. Once I've completed the foot section, now I can prepare to make the toe of the sock, raising half the needles on the back half between the green and the blue slotted cylinder needles. Continue with the normal routine of raising one needle prior to changing direction when making the toe. Here I switched to the blue sock yarn for the toe of the sock. After about 4 rows of stitches, add the heel forks on either end of the toe. Now the sock is done, and I'm going to add a good contrasting waist yarn. Be sure to pull through enough of sock yarn so that you can close your toe with the Kitchener stitch. From underneath the machine, remove the weight. Also remove the hanger and the knurled roll from the knitted material. Always inspect the great work that you just completed. Here is a photo of the finished sock. Thank you for watching, and we hope this video was helpful.